Well, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. And if you're new with us, Pastor Pod is all about real and transparent conversations on what pastors really think about stuff. And so if you're new with us, I'm Josh, and I'm a pastor here in Venice, Florida. I'm here with my co-host, as always, Jay Mudd, who is in the Orlando metro area. And today we are going to have an incredible conversation. An incredible pastor and friend that I've met back in college, Josh Abernathy, who's coming from City Church in Griffin, Georgia. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, it's a long time no see, buddy. So it's good to see your face. I mean,
it's great to see you.
We've talked over,
yeah,
Facebook and stuff, but yeah. And Jay, it's good to see you as well, man. So,
does you guys still use Facebook? That's interesting. I don't use Facebook a lot. So yeah, it's good to meet you. I just met Josh like 10 seconds before you hit record on this podcast. I met Josh for the first time, and they've already been ragging me. It's been a long time already. I feel like this podcast has been we just hit record. And I feel like I've been on this podcast for a long time. Because see, we do value transparency on the podcast, Josh, but you call it passive aggressive. But it's transparency, it's real, it's truth, it's what it is. But it's not passive aggressive. You like to get me all worked up, and that's what you get. So here we go. Let's go.
This is going to be fun.
Well, we had a quick talk about Boston sports, and obviously, if you follow the NBA playoffs, Boston Celtics had a great run, but they just played. Played Game 7 like you would play a pickup game at the local YMCA. They kind of just walked up and down the court. They seemed all out of shape, and the Heat played like they wanted to win the game, and it was just really odd. And I didn't know. I don't want to be negative, but I'll just say and I'm not a Heat fan. I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm just a basketball fan. It broke my heart because I wanted to see a buzzer beater, into the second overtime kind of game.
They forgot it was Game 6. They forgot it was Game 7. They played Game 7 and Game 6, which is weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They didn't have anything left in the tank. Josh, what was your take? I mean, Josh is a big basketball guy, so I wanted to get your thoughts.
I've become I don't want to be. I mean, I'm going to get ragged on as a bandwagoner, but I have become a Jimmy Butler fan. I just think he is just cold-blooded. I was hoping for a better game. I mean, so Game 6 was Saturday night, and it went into the late hours, and I was so ticked after Game 6 because I wanted the Heat to go, and so I didn't get to sleep till like 1 a.m. I was like, I got to get up in like 4 hours, but
I have to preach.
But the Celtics didn't. I mean, I think that, the ankle hurt a little bit, but no excuse for Jaylen Brown, and just
8 turnovers.
I was hoping for more.
Turnovers. 8 turnovers.
But I received a text message during the fourth quarter, probably like 10 minutes left in the game, from our very own Jay Mudd saying, well, who's your pick? Who's going to win the game? The Heat or the Celtics? I'm like, the Heat. They're up by like 20. He's like, oh, no, the Celtics are definitely going to win.
Okay. You're not reading.
I was like,
text.
well, I know you believe in miracles. You believe in miracles.
I do. Listen, I'm not a bandwagon fan like my friend down here, Josh, that I just met.
Hey, listen.
I'm not a bandwagon fan. Butler didn't show up in the last 2 games the Heat were playing. He didn't really do much. All right. I think whatever. He's overrated.
I mean, you can't. He didn't do much.
I can't even say that with a straight face. Butler's a good ball player.
He really is. He really is. And here's the thing. I've been a long time, a very disappointed Orlando Magic fan from a long time ago. Right, we've had some good years, but a long time ago, they had a chance to actually get Jimmy Butler about 8 years ago, and they passed on him. So I'm still a little salty over that, but yeah, basketball season is coming to an end, so it's exciting to see the finals. So
we don't.
I feel like I need to comment on the bandwagon thing. I'm a Hawks fan through and through. I mean, what am I going to talk about right now? Like, we got to get rid of Trae Young. I don't know what.
Hey, at least you're in the playoffs. I mean, that's good.
Yeah. They were in the playoffs a long time ago.
Yeah, Josh is lifelong Atlanta guy, right? So, I mean, you've been in Atlanta for quite a while, and we're just super glad you're here. And so we want to take some time, get to know you and your family, get to know what God's been doing in your church. I've been following you from afar and seeing you you guys plant City Church, and I know Warren's on staff, and I know a lot of great people are up there with you. And so just tell us a little about your family. Tell us about kind of what, where God's brought you guys, and introduce the Pastor Pod audience to who you are.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, I've been married for 16 years. And so I actually met my wife at the school that Josh and I attended, college we attended, Tacoma Falls College. Met her there, and she didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I just bugged her for about a year. And finally she went on a date with me, and here we are now. So she's thankful for that. But married for 16 years. We have 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old daughter named Addie, 11-year-old daughter named Lucy, and an 8-year-old son named Shaw. And so we've lived in the Metro Atlanta area since we graduated from college. And so I was on staff at a Christian school for about 4 years. They brought me in to coach basketball, and 2 years in, I realized I am a decent player on the NCCAA Division II level, NCCAA Division II level decent player, but an awful coach. And so I transitioned there into just kind of a Bible teaching role there. And then about 4 years in, we got called into be a part of a church plant as a 3-year-old church plant at the time, the church that we've been attending. And so the pastor was like, "Hey, we think you could be a great student pastor. Do you want to come on staff with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." He was like, "Awesome. I can't pay you for the first year." I was like, "This is what it's like to be a part of a church plant." Okay. And so, but I said yes. And so we worked for free for the first year, and then came on part-time, and then came on full-time there, and was there for about 8 years. And so in that 8 years, we had our 3 kids were born, and then we just felt a call out of that into where we are now. And so it's actually the area that my wife grew up in, and it was the area that we had been living in for about 10 years. And so we felt the call here to Griffin. And so, yeah, man. So we've planted church 4 years ago, and it's been a crazy ride. Our family, our kids love it right now, which is a gift. But we are big sports people. And so my kids, my 2 girls, I tried to get them to play basketball, and they wanted nothing to do with it. So one plays volleyball and soccer, and the other plays soccer. My son plays basketball, but he just informed me this past baseball season that he likes baseball more than basketball. So my soul died a little bit, and we're working through that now. But I mean, yeah, that's us in a nutshell. So yeah, we're excited about what God's doing, and yeah, we love it. We love church planting for sure.
So did you say your son sold out because he wanted to play baseball instead of basketball?
I mean, I don't know if can you call your kid a sellout? I mean, I'm just asking like what that.
You said. That's what you said. You felt like it was a sellout.
No, my soul died a little bit when you told me.
Oh,
there it is.
Why did I say?
Yeah, my soul died.
I was like, sellout. Wow, that's strong. That's
yeah.
strong.
No, yeah. I mean, we're competitive in our family, but yeah.
Not that competitive. Competitive. Okay.
No.
Making sure I heard you properly. Okay. I was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood you. My fault. Okay, got it.
That is all right. Yeah.
So Josh, you've been at the church, you at City Church, how long now?
So 4 years. So I was on staff at a church plant, and so we were 10 years old at the time, 11 years old about, and just felt like God started doing something new in my heart when I was there. So at that point, I was a next gen pastor. And so I actually went to our lead pastor and said, "Hey, I feel like the decisions we're making, we were 2 campuses at that time. And I said, hey, the decisions we're making, I think they're biblical. I think they're Holy Spirit led. I said, there's just some things that we're doing that when I look at them, like I think to myself sometimes I might do that differently." And so I said, "Hey, can you help me understand whether if it's preference, I'll just get over it. But if God's doing something new in me, can you help me kind of navigate through that?" And so my wife and I and him and the elders, they just kind of protected us for a few months of just prayer. And just, we came into a meeting about 3 months later and said, "Hey, we feel like God's calling us to plant a church." And they were like, "It's about dang time." And so he got on stage and said, "Hey, we're going to send Josh and Lauren to plant a church. And whoever wants to go can go." He told our staff, whoever wants to go can go. and they paid our salary for the first year as we planted. And so I tell that story because it's not the way that the more church planners I met, that's not the way that most stories happen when someone feels the call within a staff and gets sent out. And so it's just been a really healthy, just beautiful process for us. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's cool to see from afar kind of what God has been doing. And so, you shared a little bit with me offline, just that your 1-year anniversary was online only due to COVID, right? And all you've been through. So tell us a little bit of the journey. Of course, you shared the church sent you out. They helped send people. They didn't just say it. They actually really were a multiplying church. They really wanted to see you guys succeed. So tell us how your vision was developed and kind of the way you launched the church. Like how did you launch the church differently maybe than how a lot of people might launch a church?
Yeah. So, I mean, the runway was pretty healthy and lengthy for us. And so it was 2018. We finished up in June of 2018, but really I had a couple months where they kind of let me do both. So I was kind of wrapping up ministry and student ministry, but also planting and everything. But before that, I mean, we were just praying. Okay, we felt the call to plant. We didn't know where. And so God just kind of brought, as I was driving home one day, God brought 2 verses to my heart. Matthew 5:14, city on a hill cannot be hidden. Jeremiah 29:7, seek the peace of the city to which I have sent you. And so God just kind of married those 2 verses together and just said, hey, I want you to be a part of the city of God for the city of Griffin. And so Griffin it's where we live. We live really right outside of Griffin, but we would drive through Griffin every day and go to McDonough where we were on staff. And so it was also this place that in that 3 months of praying where I would park in one parking lot every day on my way home and just pray, God, what are you doing? And so we just felt like God gave us a pretty clear vision to be a church just for our city. And so we just, we started learning that. And so I made a list of 100 people, teachers, business leaders, the mayor, city manager, and I just scheduled meetings with them and just asked them 4 questions. And I said, hey, we don't want to come in here and be prescriptive because that's what most churches do. They come into a community and say, we know what the city needs or we know what the community needs. And so we want to be students. And so we're going to ask you to be as descriptive as possible so we can learn. And so I just met with a bunch of people and asked them 4 questions. So, what is your vision for the city in the next 5 years? What is the city's greatest needs? What do you want the city relationship between the city and the church to look like? And, or what does it currently look like? And then what would you dream of it looking like? And so about 90% of the people that I had conversations with said no one's ever asked us what we would like the church relationship between the church and city to look like. And so we just built some trust there. And at that time the only thing I could offer was an ice cream truck. So the first purchase we made in our fundraising journey was we bought a FedEx truck. We wrapped it and with the ice cream graphic, threw 3 freezers in there and would just drive around and not drive around like creepy ice cream truck. We would do events, but in sitting in those meetings, I was like, hey, I can't offer you anything. In fact, I'm not going to come away from this meeting and be like, we'll meet that need. I said, the only thing I can offer you is free ice cream, which created a cool conversation of like, what do you mean? Yeah. Like, that's weird. And I was like, no, we have an ice cream truck. And so to date, that ice cream truck we've handed out over 100,000 pieces of ice cream at over 500 events. And it's just been a cool way to build trust in the community. But that's really how we started. Is we just started kind of asking questions. And then one day those questions led to just an organization called the Downtown Council. They throw events downtown. And I just said, what's your greatest need? And they're like, we don't have volunteers. And so I was like, well, how many volunteers do you need? And she was like, we need like 15 for an event coming up. And at that point, our launch team was about 35 people. And so I was like, we can do that. And so doing that led to the city lost funding for movies in the park. And I was sitting in a corner, in a back corner of a meeting. And like, we'll come to these meetings and like, I will speak when spoken to. I just want to learn. And they're like, hey, we need to do movie in the park, but no, we can't fund it. And so the head of the Downtown Council looked at me and said, Josh, do you want to take movie in the park? And I was like, yes. I don't know what that means or what that is, but yes, we'll do that. And so we started doing movies in the park and building that trust. And so that was our first movie in the park was June of 2018. And so at that movie in the park, we did it strategically in downtown. So we may get this later, but our city is incredibly divided geographically. And so by train tracks. And so you have North Griffin, it's predominantly Black community. You have South Griffin, which is predominantly white. And to drive 2 blocks between the communities, to drive 2 blocks south, the average income drops by about $100,000. And so it's just incredibly divided. And so, I mean, the phrase "on the other side of the tracks" is what's used here a lot about people. They live on the other side of the tracks. And so we just started, we strategically did the event in the middle of all that. And so there's a bridge that goes over those train tracks and connects the 2 parts of the city. And so we did the event right where that bridge is, at this little pocket park. And so you had families walking over the bridge and families driving their golf carts to the event. And so at that event, a mom came to my wife and said, "Hey, thank you for creating a space that I haven't seen in a long time. It's a space where white kids and black kids can play together. And I can show my kids and my family that this is celebrated and it's not something that should be foreign to us." And so we just felt like we were onto something, and more importantly, God was onto something there. And so we just tried to build that momentum of that. And so we launched. We were supposed to launch in January of 2019, and that's a whole nother story. We couldn't find a place to rent, and so that we were trying to be portable, but we just couldn't find a place to do that. The school system had been burned by other churches, so they wouldn't let us in. And so we found a building downtown that we were like, we're going to buy this building and we're going to renovate it. And it was a very small building, and we could afford it. So we did this thing. We had it under contract, and so we had to do environmental test on it. And then December 20th of 2018, found out that there was $250,000 worth of soil remediation that had to be done in the building. And so we had to walk away. It was the worst Christmas of my life. And so at that point, I was like, we're just not supposed to do this. Like, I was literally ready to walk away from it. And so we kept plugging away. And then we ended up launching in a basically a strip mall. We had about 11,000 square feet that a church was in, and they were leaving, and they called us, and we just took over the lease of it. And so we signed the lease February 28th, and it was pretty beat. Like, the carpet was from the Reagan administration. And so we had to renovate the entire thing. So we renovated 11,000 square feet in 2 weeks and just launched. We didn't do preview services. So you're talking about we didn't go by the book at all, but we were like, we've got to launch. And so we launched March 17th, 2019. And so if you do the math, March 15th, 2020, that was when COVID ramped up, and we had to Saturday before that Sunday, we had canceled all the food trucks for the 1-year celebration and all that stuff, and went online. And once again, we're faced with like, hey, what's going to happen? And are we actually going to make it through this thing? So every birthday, it's I kind of get the shakes a little bit, twitch a couple of times. So, but yeah, that was it. So we've tried desperately to be a church that we just have 3 values that we're, and our church was planning on the initial question of what would it look like for a group of people to exhaust who they are on what they're for instead of what they're against. And so our 3 values that we want to be for Jesus, for all people, and for the city. And so we've just tried to live that out over the last couple of years as best as we possibly can.
I love that you said you didn't do it by the book. I think so many times we get caught up in the fact that there is a book or a right way or a wrong way to plan a church. And it can't be farther from the truth, is that God may not do it, 2 times the same way. And very rarely does he do it 2 times the same way, even though there may be some very, common factors. Very rarely does he do it the same way. And so I love your story. I appreciate the story, because it reminds us that God works in different ways, in different places, in different communities. He knows exactly what that community needs at the time he needs. And one of the things I appreciate, and I want to highlight, is the humility you went into the city with, because I think that's where God used that humility to give you favor with the county, the city, because your humility was, I just want to be a student of the city and learn. And I do think that's one of the most common mistakes churches make often, is we go in and saying, hey, we know exactly what needs to happen. We know what you need. We know a city or a community needs Jesus, but many times it's meeting the community where they're at in order to help them see who Jesus is and know Jesus. So I appreciate that. I do appreciate that about what you shared. And I think it's worth emphasizing the humility, and that it's not the same story as everybody else writes, because there's not a book. If there was a book, outside of the scripture of how we're supposed to do it. Every church planner would do it because it works, but it doesn't always work the same way. So I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. I think, how we plan it, there's not a book, but there's a playbook, like even for like, you got to get this many people in your launch team, and you got to get to here and to here if you want to launch this, this size and this large and all that. And I think with guys, I don't want to put a umbrella on every single church planner, but there are some similar characteristics of church planners. And so there's that entrepreneurial, competitive, driven person. And so you do put like hey, this is where you got to get, this is what you got to have, and all this stuff. And there's wisdom behind that stuff, but then it's always not going to play out that way. And I think, it's easy also to come into a community and say, hey, we're going to bring Jesus to the community, instead of realizing like, hey, God's already been here. And so like, how do we just kind of come alongside and give people a different taste of who he already is and what he's been doing? But yeah, man, I think that, and that was probably the hardest thing, because it was like, we have to launch January. Like, we've got to do it. And it was like, this isn't going to happen now. And so what do we do now? And I mean, that's honestly been the narrative of our entire, I mean, when COVID hit, my like competitive side was like, went into overdrive, and it was like, we're going to meet every need of the city right now. And Warren, who's our city engagement pastor, he was our first hire, which is not traditional either. Normally they tell you hire worship, hire kids and all that. And so we hired a guy who's basically going to be outreach and make sure that we stayed on mission even when Sunday started. And I was like, you got to figure it all out now, man. And I about ran him into the ground and myself into the ground, because it was like, there's just, you can't always do that. And that doesn't always work that way. So yeah, it's a dance, man. It's a dance. But then at the end of the day, like, the thing that we said day one was that we don't want to get so wrapped up in building our church that we miss Jesus building his. And I think that's just been the common language that we've had to say to each other at times. More so my team has had to say to me at times, just to kind of put me back in the right perspective of things.
That's really good. I mean, I think with leadership comes stress, it comes pressure, and then you throw in COVID and like uncertainty of when you can meet and when you can't, and what steps we have to take to keep people connected when you can't gather, and all that. I mean, it almost feels like it was another lifetime, but we all went through it
right
in our own way.
Yeah.
Right. And so tell us a little bit, because you shared a little bit with me and Jay, just that God's been doing a work in you, and part of that work that he does in you. And of course, I know me and Jay can also agree, is sometimes through going through seasons of difficulty or anxiety or stress. And so I've always appreciated this about you. I mean, even going back to our college days, you were always very transparent and humble. And I know that that's kind of, we've heard that today, if you're listening and tracking along with us. But just with that said, tell us kind of the journey that God's brought you on some moments where you've really struggled with dealing with all that was going on, maybe inside or even with the church, and how he's been working on you, because that's an area of my life I'm trying to learn and grow in, with all the pressures and the burdens that we carry as pastors. And then you just add on all the stuff you read about the culture, our community, and even just our needs in our own families. So just tell us about your journey there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we get into, so 2020 hits, our March 15th, we go online and we're like, oh, it's going to be a couple weeks. And then all of a sudden, it's like, it's a couple months. And I think it started with, I have learned that the 10-minute, 15-minute car ride from the church or downtown to my house is a gift. And when that 10-minute car ride became 10 steps from my porch to my living room during COVID, like the lines got so blurred for me in that. So I think it kind of started there. And the thing is, like, even during COVID, like, God was so gracious to our church and the things that we got to do and the relationships we have with the city. I mean, there was, the city, they were like, hey, we need to figure out a way to get everybody on board. So mayor, city manager, chief of police, all these like 40 different entities. And they were like, we need to figure out a way to meet. And Warren was like, well, I can run a Zoom call. And they were like, well, that's amazing. You can do that. And I mean, it's a very simple thing, but I was like, yeah, we can do that. And so, I mean, in the process of that, like, so one day I'm sitting on my back porch and there's 40 people on a Zoom call, and it's about 2 weeks into doing this every other day, I think. And the city manager stops at the end of this and he says, hey, if you know what we need right now, we need prayer. And he said, if you're not okay with that, or you're not about that, then you can get off the call now. And he asked Warren, our city manager, our city engagement pastor, to pray. And so like I took the video off my screen. I'm like punching, like fist punching the air, like this is the coolest thing ever, right? And so we keep seeing these, like we saw God move throughout the entire thing. So it was like we could see his hand and his faithfulness through it. But I think the pressure that I put on I didn't realize the pressure that I put on myself and the lines that I blurred so much in that process. And so it was, it started with, I'm leaving my laptop on the back porch and trying to walk in and be present with my kids. And like, I can't turn my brain off. And so I'm not present there. And then with my wife, like I'm not, and so, but I'm trying to get there and I'm trying to be this for them. And I'm trying to be the pastor that I need to be for my church, but no one's ever been the pastor they need to be for their church in COVID because we never walked through it. And so it's not like they're in a playbook here at all. And so we came back to services in June, like mid-June. And so, we made all the precautions, all that stuff that, we went to 2 services and spread out and, we're spraying down stuff, all the things, trying to be as careful and as safe and, and steward, our people and what we've got well and all that. And so things are going and they're going well for the most part. And then October 2020, I'm on stage teaching and immediately, I don't know, something happened and like my knees started shaking, my chest started thumping, my heart started thumping. I got sweats and like, I was like, I'm about to either pass out or throw up. And I was like, maybe like my blood sugar dropped. I ate breakfast, all that stuff, but it was a baptism Sunday. And so our baptisms, we just have a water trough a feeding trough on the stage and it's behind me. And so, and also in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm going to pass out and fall in the baptismal. Like this is going to happen right now. So I just told Warren in the middle of the service, I said, hey, will you grab me a stool? And so I sat on the stool and it didn't go away. And so I was like, well, maybe my blood sugar dropped. So I got something to eat afterwards between services, but the second service came and I still had it again. I still felt the same way. And I was like, that was just, at that point you walk away from the first time, like that was just strange. And so we didn't think anything of it. And then the next Sunday comes and I'm on stage and I feel like I'm going to pass out or throw up. And first service, maybe it was this, second service, maybe it was this. And so I was like, something's not right. And the next Sunday, same thing. And to the point where like after that third Sunday, I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like it was that, you're staying on stage and trying not to throw up, also trying to clearly communicate something, and just feeling like, what in the heck is happening? And so that happened for about a month. And I remember it was a Monday and I was just sitting in the house. And at this point, Lauren knew, but my wife's the only one that really knew what was going on. And then it kept happening. And I just felt so much shame. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't speak. I can't pastor anymore. Like, I just want to give it. I want to give up because this is literally miserable. Because if I'm not on stage feeling like I'm going to pass out, I'm thinking about it the rest of the week. And so, and to sit on we do a Monday night leadership development call every Monday night with any person who leads a team, and, a month in, and just to be able to, and have to say like, hey, when I'm on stage right now, like, this is what's going on. And I mean, I've been in ministry now for 20 years. And so at that point it was like 16 years and preached for 16 years and never felt anything like that. And so to have that and to feel that, like, and not know what's going on, you just start walking through all the worst things. And so even when you're on stage, your mind's playing so many games with you. And all you're thinking is, how can I get out here fast enough? So like, I'm cutting messages short just to, trying to get off stage as fast as possible. And really just questioning, like, am I supposed to even do this? And so I went to the doctor, they ran all the tests and they're like, you're you're fine. You're good. I found out I had high blood pressure, which is just, so I had to lose some weight, which is a benefit of going to the doctor, I guess, but it didn't really solve that problem. And so I just started wrestling with it and wrestled with it for about 3 months. It just wouldn't go away. And finally in January, I got in counseling, just to figure out, okay, what's going on. And so that was almost 2.5 years ago. But it was still this and that was a whole, we can talk about counseling for forever. I'm still in it and probably will always be in it, but most of our staff's in counseling as well. But for me, it was just that, a couple of things. It was I don't want to feel this. I don't know why I'm feeling this. And then you start saying, well, I'm the only one that ever feels this. And so slowly, I started bringing in guys into this, other pastors. And I remember just 3 different dinners where I'm sitting with a buddy, and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on stage. And their response, and it wasn't it wasn't cold hearted. Their response was like, man, that stinks. And that was it. And it was like, okay, you just desperately want someone to be like, I get it. And there was nobody. And you just kept, so you're like, well, crap, I just got to figure it out. And I just got to fight my way through and push my way through. And that's my mentality, is when something's hard, I just put my head down, charge the mound, and I'll work my way through it. And so just, man, kept going through this process, stayed in counseling, figured out, in a couple months, where some of my pressure came from. And it was feeling like I had to win in church planning. I had to do it. And the pressure was on me to do it. And I found out that I'm a non-emotional fixer. That's my, people come to me. There's you can seem to remove yourself from the situation and see it objectively. And I'm like, I used to think that was a gift. And now I realize, no, I taught myself how not to feel. And when I began to feel something, my body didn't know what to do with it. So all that went on, and just continuing to do that. And I'll be honest, I still have those feelings on stage now, it's 3 years later, and they haven't left. But it was about 9 months later, I brought in a pastor to speak for our church in the summer. In July, I take the month off. And we'll talk about that in a second. But he helped plan our church. So I took him to dinner. We're at a pizza place on a Saturday night, and I shared with him the same thing. And he said, I still get emotional. I told it 1,000 times, but he said, I totally understand what you mean. And that was finally, you feel validated. And so he was like, I felt like that for the last 15 years. And I was like, oh crap, it doesn't go away. And so, but we just sat, so I'm sitting at this pizza place that I've been in a million times, and I'm bawling my eyes out over this pizza. And the waitress is like, are you safe? Are you okay? Do we need a safe word right now? And so he just began to walk me through, he's like, I felt that. I mean, it's word for word what I went through for him 15 years ago. And I was like, well, what do you do? How do you get through it? And he walked me through some things that have, drastically changed the way that I view it. Things like, hey, nerves and anxiety. But also it's just your mind saying, your body telling you you desperately care about this. And so, when that stuff comes up, he said, what I tell myself, this is what I tell myself, is that, hey, this will be uncomfortable, but I will finish. And so, so you're again on stage trying to deliver a message, and then that the feelings well up. And so you're dealing with that. And then you're also trying to talk to yourself. But it's just been a process for me, and a journey. And I'm not to the end of it. But I think it's been cool. The first time I ever shared it was Easter Sunday in 2021. And we were just talking about, hey, Jesus defeated the darkness once for all. So why do we live in it? And so I just said, hey, here's my darkness. This is what I feel every Sunday. And I feel incredibly inadequate. And the fear in my head is, if I tell you, that you're going to think less of me. And so, that's, sorry, I'm getting all emotional, but that's just been the process for me, that I know where some of it comes from, but just some of it's just there. And it's some Sundays it's worse than others. The only person that can really read me is my wife. And she can tell when it's there, which is a gift. And so, yeah, man, that's just been the story of Yeah, of the last few years for me.
Well, I appreciate your transparency. I think there's a lot that God is teaching you, and I think there's moments where I can go through those times of anxiety. It's the last 4 months, probably some moments that I can relate to you on that. Yeah. Sometimes on stage, sometimes not. So, yeah. But I appreciate your honesty, because I think some people think pastors don't deal with what everybody else deals with. And I know that it doesn't really answer what we're talking about today, but I think sometimes there's a view that like, that we're pastors. So we're just at a place spiritually, or that we don't face anxiety, stress, difficult conversations, whatever it might be. And I think it's awesome that you took those steps to be real with a counselor and be willing to go through, really asking God to help you and ask others to help you. Because I think that's the thing, is like Satan wants to isolate us and make us think that we're the only person that's ever dealt with this or that. And I just respect that you're transparent, and that you're saying, hey, to your church family, like, I'm not faking it. I'm not trying to just go through the motions. Like, I need Jesus too, and this is how he's working in my life. So I think that is what people lean into more than I think ever before, is when pastors are real about, this is who I am. This is what God's doing in me, and you can pray for me, So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's been a gift, right? Like, just I've got a guy this past Sunday. He came to me and he's just wrestled with anxiety for a long time. And he was like, I want you to know, every time you're up there, I'm praying for you. And those are just, those are cool moments for me of, like, all right, I'm not in this alone. And I think the more that a Sunday gathering can feel like a communal experience, I think the more healthy it becomes. And it's not a one-way conversation, but there's an invitation, and people feel like they have a part in it. I just think it's such a beautiful thing. This is a completely other, but I think that's one thing I've learned about, like, we've built some good friendships with some predominantly Black churches, and just the communal experience that their services is just it's a beautiful thing. And I think the more that we can invite people into it. Some of the coolest moments are for me, because I say from stage periodically, like, hey, I'm in counseling. If you don't know my counselor's name, I'll give it to you, and you can call them up, and I've just, there's probably about 20 men over the last few years that have been like, I think I need to get into counseling. And like, that to me is a huge win, just because, that's not number one, in the church world. I feel like, at least growing up for me, we never talked about that. Like, it was like, you need marriage counseling, or when there's like a moral failure, they got into but it was never like hey, I just need to be in counseling so I can be healthy, or I'm working through some stuff or whatever. And so I just think normalizing that more is a huge thing for us, and it's just been a big win in that for us. And so but I think it did start with having and that was a hard hurdle to clear, of like, I just need to be out with this. Like, I just need to, people just got to know what's going on, so.
You've shared a lot of good stuff, and thank you for being transparent. Thank you for being real about your journey, your story, about counseling, bringing that up, having those open conversations, being open about that. Excuse me. What are a couple of things that? What are some things that you say, hey, look, if these are if we were to take everything you've said today, which is a lot, what are some things that you would say, hey, pastors, you really need to take this to heart? These are some lessons that I've learned that I want to pass along, that are just really valuable things that every pastor, including Josh and I, need to know.
Yeah, man. This is one of those where I'm like, I'm 4 years into this thing, right? And trying to figure it out still. But I think the thing that I didn't realize is, the difference between starting something and sustaining something. The effort that starting something, so church planning, the effort that church planning needs, the same amount of effort that you put into starting something, you have to put into sustaining it. And so, but what that actually looks like, it's just a different kind of energy and a different kind of awareness. I think it's for you. I think it's for, we're 4 years in now, and by the grace of God, the people that started with us, majority of them are still here. We've had some, there's a few that, stories of, we had one that, was just like, hey, 6 months in, like, hey, we're going to leave because we're tired of hearing about Black people. And what they meant was they're tired of hearing about us talk about diversity. And I just graciously said, like, man, if you're ticked off now, like, I'm just going to tick you off even more, and we're just going to tick you off even more. So maybe it's, there's a better place for you. But for the most part, like, we've had, people that have stayed. And so I think even the way that I'm learning to build sustainable rhythms, because I think balance is a myth. I think the more that we talk about how do I balance family and church, like, it's a myth. There's no way for it. And I think balance brings pride into our hearts, because it makes us think that we're doing something. I think when we can build rhythms of rest and rhythms of health, I think that is just a better, it's Sabbath, right? Like, it's a biblical concept of rest is Sabbath. And so, I think for me, it's what I've learned is, you've got to figure out, I think 2 things are important to me, is coaching and counseling. So to have somebody in your corner that is, asking you difficult questions, because like you said, Josh, I think, and I'm just now experiencing, but like, there's moments in ministry where I felt like I totally get and see where pastors put themselves on an island, and I understand why. Like, because no one else in the church is going to experience what you're feeling. No one else in the church will experience the pressure. Like, everyone thinks that their phone call is the only phone call that's coming to you, and their text message is the only text message that's coming to you. And they don't realize the 20 to 30 to 40 to 100, whatever it is, text messages that you're getting daily. And so it's very easy to be like, no one else gets it. And so, like, I'll try to survive on this island. And so I think inviting someone into your corner that can help you in that's ahead of the game for you. So, I've got a coach that he's playing at church 14 years ago. And so I've got a source of accountability to him, just on everything. So, like, rhythms in my life, mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, all those things. I think so. Coaching is a big one. I do think counseling's I'm just a big advocate for it. And I think it's something that can be built into your rhythm. I think it can be built into most people's budgets. And so I think it's something that to offer, to lead the way and be a part of. And then I think you also offer it to your staff as well in that. And so, and with that, so like with those rhythms, I just think rhythms of rest are huge. And not like rhythms of naps. I think naps are good, but I wish I could take more of them. My brain just can't shut off that easy. But I think rhythms of just sitting in stillness, or even activity where I get to focus my mind back on Jesus, and get to focus my mind back and inviting the Holy Spirit, and just listening to the Holy Spirit and allowing him to fill me up. Like, I've got to fight for those, because my default is not to rest ever. And so we've built in some of those things into our family. So, like, weekly, monthly, yearly. Weekly, my wife and I have a date. And so we take, sometimes it's just lunch and a walk. Other times it's a little bit more, but we have a date once a week. Monthly, there's things that I've tried to build in. And then yearly, I take the month of July off. So from stage, definitely, and from the majority of church responsibilities, and just to go on vacation with my family. I take a trip by myself with my coach and like the cohort that I'm in, and some of those things. And so just the time to get away, because for me, like, I can't, knowing that the stage takes so much out of me, and being okay with that, because I feel like I know I'm called to it. And ministry takes so much out of us, but we're called to it. I think we've got to build in those rhythms of rest, and fight for them. And I think what I've seen is our staff has just learned to fight for it more. And what's weird is that, so Warren and I've talked about a couple of times, we're both turning 40 this year. And so we're the oldest by far on our staff. And so one of the things that we forget is that we need to have the conversations with our young staff that we either wish somebody had with us, or they did have with us. And so, trying to just lead the way in that is it's a challenge, but trying to do it better than what we grew up seeing. So
That's awesome. What network or cohort are you connected with, Josh?
Yeah, so the church planning network is one that we went through with Stadia. So Stadia still provides some post-launch coaching. So they're actually coming in a few weeks to do some staff assessment stuff with our staff here. And then the coach that I've got, his name's John Peacock. And so he's a Mission Church in Chicago. And so he started, I just lucked out. I went to this church planning cohort and pre-launch, and he was one of the speakers. And I was like, hey, man, can I get your number and just pick your brain at times? And then the next year he was like, I think I want to start coaching. And so we were like the guinea pigs, like we were the beta. But I've just stayed in it. I thought I could take a year off, and 6 months into taking a year off, I was like, no, I need this still. And so, so we just built back into it.
Awesome.
Well, Josh, this has been a great conversation. One that, I think I can go back and listen to and gather multiple different factors of things that you've learned along the way that you can pass on that are, I think they're timeless in the sense of pastors. I think pastors, 20 years ago would say some of the same things you're saying right now that need to be passed on. So I'm encouraged that you're passing these on to your staff now. So, Josh, I do want to thank you for being here on the podcast today, and thank you for sharing and being transparent and real. And opening up to us and whoever else clicks on this podcast and listen. And so thanks again for being here. Josh Robinson, again, it's been a good time. Man, I think we get more out of these podcasts than some of our listeners do, but we're grateful because of the guests like you. So from Josh, and myself, from both Joshes and me, we hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. I hope to see you back here next week on the Pastor Pod. See you now.